Welcome to the Quest. We are turning the curve today, and we're going to move away from the husband-wife relationship. And we've been talking about how to win in that part of the home, but for the final 3 sessions of this semester, we're going to focus on our attention on how to win at parenting. I've only been a parent for 4 years, okay, but for me, it's been the most life-changing experience, second only to the day I put my faith in Christ. In fact, the impact to my life when I became a dad even surpassed the day I became a husband, and my wife concurs with that. Many of you know my story, and you know that I was really a reluctant father. This is not something I'm proud of, but I was so intensely focused on the ministry that I started in 1980, traveling around the country and speaking in venues and all over the country and the world. And from my perspective, it just made sense to keep life simple. And this was something that Dana and I talked about before we got married, and it was counter to what she desired, but she loved me and she supported me. But guys, I just want to confess to you now, okay? I want to confess to you that for me, not wanting children was a wrong choice. It was a selfish choice, and it was a cowardly choice. We were in our 17th year of marriage when Dana got pregnant. It was late winter of 2004. I'd planned my speaking schedule that fall with a little window of opportunity to accommodate her calculated delivery date. But it didn't go as planned. She was late. Her doctor told me to go ahead and fly out that Wednesday for an event that I had scheduled that ran through the weekend. He said, now when you get back, we'll induce labor, everything will be fine. So he was confident. I left. That night, shortly after midnight, Dana calls. She said she's feeling some contractions. And so I spring into action. I get the next flight home. The adrenaline's pumping. I'm multitasking. I'm calling the event coordinator, telling him it's time to implement Plan B that we had in place. And that was the first event I'd ever canceled in 24 years of speaking. In all those years, I never had to cancel an event. So already I could feel it. My life is changing. I began to sing that REM song, "It's the end of the world as I know it." I made it home in time. We drove to Harris Methodist Hospital in Fort Worth, and that's when we learned our baby was trying to back into the world, and they'd need to do a C-section. In the delivery room, I'm hunkering down on one side of this curtain, encouraging my wife, while the doctor performs the surgery on the other side of the curtain, okay? And when they removed our baby girl, the nurse said, "Dad, do you want to see?" And so I kind of peeked over the curtain. Guys, it was like the Discovery Channel in HD. I thought, are you guys going to get all that stuff back together, you know? In that moment, I had been given in an instant 2 of the greatest gifts any man can have. New life had been given to me. Clean, innocent, pure, new life as a gift to me. And with that, I was given a new title, one of the most honorable titles a man can ever wear. From that point, I'd be called Dad. Scared me to death. 2 days later, we're leaving the hospital. I've secured our new baby girl in her new car seat. I remember turning on the ignition, and a CD I was listening to started playing. And I looked in the back seat, and I said, "Anna, this is our Jeep, and these are the Beatles." And off we went. And life has been a remarkable adventure. I will tell you this, okay? The man that I described myself as being 4 years ago really seems like an alien to me now, a stranger to me now. I'm still scared to death, but it's a healthy fear. And I've been called, as many of you have in this room, we've been called to perform a miracle, to shape and mold these little human beings. And for me, this little human being called a girl. Most of you have had an entirely different experience. You had this feeling of euphoria when your child was first born. And you guys remember that? How many of you guys remember that? Or were you all just completely just numb? You know, it's funny how you move from the cheer, "It's a girl," or "It's a boy," to "Help, I'm a parent." It's kind of like this. A young dad took his 4-year-old son shopping. The little boy was in the shopping cart. The dad didn't realize it was already way past his nap time. So he began to squirm and cry, and after a while, the little boy was picking things out of the shopping cart, dropping them on the floor, and they'd get close to a shelf, he'd grab some cereal boxes and, throw them. And pretty soon the son began to throw a temper tantrum. There's this little old lady walking behind this young dad and his son, and she'd hear the dad say, "Hang in there, Ronnie. It's okay, Ronnie. Don't do that, Ronnie. You're going to regret that. Don't get out of control. Don't do it, Ronnie. Hang in there, buddy." When they got it to the checkout line, the lady said to him, "I've been watching you, and you really do a good job with your son, Ronnie." And the young man turned back with a stress-filled face. He said to the lady, "Ma'am, I'm Ronnie." Hang in there, buddy. Don't do that. You're going to hurt somebody if you do. Now, maybe you've been there. You see, fathering the future is both a thrilling and sometimes a terrifying assignment. Someone once said, as parents, we are creators of human life, second only to God himself. That's an incredible assignment. Over the next 3 weeks, what I want to do is explore what it means to be a good dad. Today we're going to take a flyby of some big picture perspectives of parenting. Next session, we're going to get up close and personal, and I'm going to present you a year-by-year game plan of how a dad raises a healthy son or daughter. Guys, you don't want to miss that. Finally, we're going to finish before our semester break, and we're going to look at the 4 keys to maximum parenting. And whether you have a family or not, this is a wonderful opportunity to store away some nuggets of wisdom that could help you understand you and how you were raised, or maybe what you need to do when you become a father, or if you're a father already, some things that you need to reemphasize or readjust, or maybe this is just going to be an encouragement that you've been doing a whole lot of things really well. So let's start by looking at 10 ingredients for a healthy family. These are the results of research by George Barna. He had collected a number of studies on the family, and he found that there were some common elements in each of them that simply said what a healthy family is all about. If you want more, it's in his book, The Future of the American Family. I'm going to give you these 10 ingredients, and you can do your own spontaneous survey. Here's what I want to recommend, okay? As I list them for you, and we're going to cruise through these, as I list them for you, you can put a plus sign or a minus sign to each ingredient. A plus sign says, this is true of my family. The family that you grew up in or the family you now have. A minus says, this is a weak spot for us. This is an area we need to grow, okay? Here's what they are. Look on your outline. The first one is this. A healthy family is characterized by strong, supportive, and honest communication. In a healthy family, people speak the truth to one another. They're not going behind each other's backs and whispering to other family members what's really going on. They can talk honestly with each other. Number 2, family members spend a large quantity of time together. A large quantity of time together. Healthy families go beyond the quality time to quantity time. Number 3, family members share a common faith and practice together. Last week we talked about the faith element of the good life. And by the way, guys, I want to say congratulations to some of you in the room today who came up to me and told me that you put your faith in Christ. I just want to say congratulations. Way to go, guys. Well done, all right? Faith is a key element in a healthy family. Number 4, family members agree on key values. Key values. They know what they believe. Number 5, family members practice love and mutual appreciation. A healthy home is an encouraging home. People are cheering for one another. Number 6, family members sacrifice for the good of one another. They sacrifice for the good of one another. They work together to help each other win. So they're not competing so much as they're complementing. Number 7, letter G. Family members have common goals and interests. Common goals and interests. That's what a healthy family looks like. And number 8, letter H. Family members demonstrate trust with one another. You know, that's the bottom line, really, with great families. People trust one another. When a family breaks down and they stop trusting, what happens is you will launch a son or a daughter out into the world, and they don't believe trust exists because in the most important unit of their life, it didn't exist. Number 9, in a healthy family, the husband and wife engage in regular sexual intercourse. Now, guys, I'm not making this up. It was in Barna's research. Now, the research says it's in the top 10 of healthy families. That's how important this kind of intimacy is. A few weeks ago, we talked about sex, and I called out some of the ladies' names who might be listening to our sessions. And some of you guys in private came to me and say, why didn't you call my wife's name out? And so here we go. Ready? Ashley, Chris, Lisa, listen up. Regular sex makes a happy home. How's that? I did that for some of my friends, okay? You know who you are. Number 10, in a healthy family, the husband and wife have a firm parental coalition in raising their children. And what that means is they agree on how they want to raise their kids. Now, before you turn the page, okay, if you did the quick survey, okay, look at your pluses and minuses. Are there some glaring weaknesses, a whole lot of minuses, either in the home you grew up in or the home you're now in? Those are the things that you need to give attention to. In fact, some of these items might need to be written down on your 10 key moves draft from session 1. You might need to write, I need to work on quantity time with my family. Or we need to work on honest communication. Some of you just wrote down, we need to have more sex, all right? So whatever it takes, there you go, okay? Now, number 10 says that it's good for a couple to be unified in how they raise their children. Even more important than unity is that you and your wife are very clear on what a child needs from you. So my question is this: do you know what your child needs from you? I mean, what they really need. There's some really sharp couples who may be brilliant in other areas, but when it comes to raising kids, they agree, but what they agree on is way off course when it comes to what a child really needs. And if they continue on that course, even though they agree, that child is going to leave home wounded and weak. The good news is we have a lot of information from reams of research to help us avoid the big mistakes. So let's just pretend that a child walks in the room up here on the stage. Let's pretend it's your child. And they're going to speak to you and tell you what you really need, what they really want from you, what they need from you, and what you'd better not miss, okay? So what would they say to you? I want to give you 10 things. Here we go. Number 1, I believe the first thing they'd say is this: Dad, I need you to know that somebody must be there for me in the early years. It's critical for my development. Most young moms and dads today don't know how vital the early years are and how the early years make the rest of life for a child. Psychiatrist Paul Meyer of the Minirth Meyer Clinic Institute says this: one of the things I have learned in my psychiatric training is that approximately 85% of a person's ultimate personality is formed by the time he or she is 6 years old. That's incredible. 6 years old. Those first 6 years are obviously the most crucial for a child in his or her development. Yet, with all this research and scientific study that reveals when a child needs maximum attention, in the world of the 21st century, we see moms and dads increasingly giving their sons and daughters to someone else as they pursue careers and other outside interests for themselves, not even knowing how much might be lacking in the development of the child, and that it could last for a lifetime. In a report to the nation from the Commission on Children at Risk from the Dartmouth Medical School, there's this massive study on child development. There were some startling discoveries. They found that in young children, and I'm quoting here, a strong, nurturing environment in the early years is crucial to properly completing the development of the brain circuitry in a child. And that's interesting to me. What does that mean? When a child is born, the brain is still hardwiring itself. It hasn't completed the process. But amazingly, what completes the process is not so much biological as it is relational. If a child has a lot of love and attention, the brain will properly hardwire itself and create a way of thinking, a pattern, if you will, that will be beneficial to the child for the rest of his or her life. Now, on the other hand, if in that formation process, mom and dad are not there for the child, or their love comes up short, the research says that rather than hardwiring itself properly, the brain kind of goes a little haywire. It still completes itself, but it wires itself wrongly. And it creates for the child problematic thinking and behavior patterns for the rest of their life. And so they're going to have to use outside means, maybe counselors or therapists, or sometimes just the hard realities of life, in order to help them overcome that wiring that went haywire in the early years. Child psychiatrist Hugh Messel summed it up this way: for better or for worse, what happens to a child early in life lives on in them as adults forever. So you need to know that, and you as a dad need to lead courageously in that. Here's the second thing I believe a child would tell us today. I believe they would say, Dad, I need a balance of discipline, instruction, and love growing up. I need a healthy mixture of those three things. I want us to take a look at 4 parenting styles in the world today. Look at the chart on your outline. You've got these 2 continuum. The vertical one is the continuum of love. The top is high love. The bottom is low love. The horizontal on the far right is high discipline and instruction. And on the left is low discipline and instruction. Now I want us to look at each of the 4 styles of parenting around this diagram. In the bottom left-hand quadrant is what we're going to call the neglectful parenting style. Now why is it neglectful? Well, because a child is growing up with very little love and very little discipline and instruction. Above that is the permissive parenting style. There's a lot of love, but not as much discipline and instruction. And to the right of that is the authoritative parenting style. This one is high in love and high in discipline and instruction. And then below that is the authoritarian style. And this style is low on love, but high on discipline and instruction. Now, when you get all those filled in, look at the quadrant, okay? Which of those parenting styles do you think dads naturally gravitate to? As men, which one do we naturally gravitate to? It's the authoritarian. Now, here's why. Dads are busy. We are action figures, okay? They don't have time sometimes to open up their heart. Many times they're trying to suppress their feelings just to get the job done. So when they come home at the end of the day, tired and worn out, sometimes beaten up, they don't have time to give as much love as they have time to give direction. Just have to get to the point, okay? And so a child gets the leftovers. Sometimes there's not a lot of attention being given on the personal side, the heart side. But this dad still wants to do the right thing. His motive is good. And he's always issuing commands. That's where dads naturally tend to fall. If you look at the research, it will tell you which of the 4 styles are the most healthy in order. And here's what they are. This may surprise you. The authoritative style is number 1, of high love and high discipline and instruction. That's number 1. You might want to put numbers by these, okay? The authoritative is the most healthy. That's obviously the best environment for a child. High love and high discipline. Number 2, interestingly, the second best parenting style is the permissive style, where there's a lot of love, even though there's not a lot of discipline and instruction. The third best parenting style is the neglectful, where the child just kind of wanders around on their own. And interestingly, number 4, the worst style of all is the authoritarian style. Have you ever met somebody who's anti-religious, anti-God, anti-Christianity? A lot of times, if you ask them the kind of home they grew up in, they'll usually tell you they grew up in a strict religious home where Dad was constantly given the authoritative religious pronouncements, but they never saw his heart. They never connected. In fact, they tell us that children raised high in love in either the authoritative or even in the permissive homes, are you ready for this? They were more likely to adopt the values of the families they grew up in. When they get to be adults, they're more likely to be responsive to authority figures. They have a greater sense of well-being. Love is what creates that. Children raised in low-love homes tend to have difficulty in adopting the family values. They're always reacting to authority figures, and they never have a good sense of well-being. Love is the difference maker. You know, the Bible says the same thing. A few weeks ago, we looked at 1 Corinthians 13:13. It says, and now these three remain, faith, hope, and love. You guys remember that? But then the last part of the verse says this, the greatest of these is what? Love. Love from a dad is the determining factor. His heart, his embrace, his words of encouragement. Discipline and instruction is important, but without love, it can actually be counterproductive. Number 3, I believe a child would tell us this. What does a child need? I believe he would say, Dad, I need you to know my personality and honor it, and the sooner the better. We spent a couple of sessions on personality when we talked about living with your wife in an understanding way and the importance of adjusting to her personality. You know, it's just as important, maybe even more important, that you know your son or your daughter's personality. The personality test in your notes, you'll find that again at the end of this session. If you have a child who's 12 years or older, I want to challenge you to do this application project, okay? 12 or older. Your application project is to carve out some time over the next week and do this with them. Now, make it fun, okay? Go over the characteristics that come with their personality. You've got that from a sheet we gave you a few weeks ago. If you need an extra one, we've got those in the back. But really emphasize the pluses. And it'll give you a way of beginning to know their personality. Now, if you have a child who's under 12, I'd suggest you and your wife sit down together and you take that test. If you're a single parent, you just sit down and go, I think I know my son or I know my little girl, and just kind of do a general guesswork test on them. Already at 4 years old, my wife and I are beginning to see some personality traits. We're thinking, I think she might be this one. And then just talk about what that means. You might say, well, we've got a choleric or a sanguine or a phlegmatic. And, you know, what does that mean and in terms of your parenting style? Here's the thing. The sooner you know your child's personality and you begin to adjust your parenting style to it, the better. Because here's why. If you take a choleric head on, you're going to have lots of fights and standoffs. Or if you have a melancholy, whose one of the weaknesses is, you know, to easily kind of get down on themselves. Well, what's going to happen is if you take them head on, you can bruise their spirit. They're going to get depressed. So you need to know who they are and adjust your parenting style based on who they are. It's great when you can help them discover who they are and tell them how much you appreciate the personality that they have. Number 4, I believe a child would tell us this. I need you to discover my bent and actively support it. Proverbs 22:6 says, train a child in the way he should go. When he's old, he will not return from it. You know the Hebrew language there literally means train up a child according to his or her bent. Now, what is a bent? A bent is how God has gifted that child. The one thing that you don't want to do as a dad is to force them to become what you want them to be, all right? It would be kind of like this, okay? We've got this rebar here, and it is clearly bent in that direction. Well, your child is bent in a certain direction by God. Now, we're not talking about them being bent in a way that dishonors God, that's against His word and His will. I'm talking about God as clearly, by their personality, their interest, He's bent them in a direction. Well, you can do this as a dad. And you can try to bend them back, but it's going to destroy them. Rather than doing that, you need to identify what their bent is. For instance, if they're not the athlete that you were, You've got to come to terms with that. If they don't want to be a part of the family business because they have no interest in selling tires or insurance or no interest in engineering or finance, are you going to support that? Or are you going to get the hammer? One guy had been discouraged his whole life by his dad because he left the family business. He was a top surgeon in town, but he was depressed about his work because he had never received the endorsement from his dad. His dad always made him feel guilty for leaving the family business. And here he was, a top surgeon. If your son or daughter is not as smart as you or your wife were, they just can't get it at school. I don't mean you just say, you let them go and you don't teach them discipline and apply themselves, but if they're more mechanical and they like to do things with their hands, are you going to encourage that? Maybe a better question is, do you know the one or two things that your son or daughter is gifted in? And does that excite you? If it doesn't, listen up carefully. They don't need to change. You do. You need to change so you can allow them to be from your heart what God has gifted them to be. Now that's huge in the healthy development of a child. By the way, guys, the child is not ours. The child is not yours. You're just a steward of the child. The child came from God and will go back to God. They're in your hands for a season to help them be what God has gifted them to be. Number 5, I believe a child would tell us this. Here's what I need. I need you to know that too much is too much. And here's what I mean by that. 3 things. Number 1, too much control over a child will crush their spirits or incite them to rebellion. It's back to that authoritarian style of parenting. Mark this down. The quickest way to not get what you want in your child is to try and guarantee getting it by over-controlling them. That is the quickest way to not get what you want. Maybe you grew up wild and crazy, so you don't want for your children to do that, so now you put strict curfews on them. You have to interview every person that comes into his or her life. And anytime they do any little thing wrong, they get heavily disciplined. They don't get their car for a week, and you over-control to prevent them from being impure and immoral and out of control. You know what you create? You create an impure, out of control, immoral child. It's like the kid who was trying to protect the little bird that they found that fell out of the nest by holding on too tight, and he kills it in the process. That's what too much control can do to a child. Too much is too much. Second thing, too much money too soon in a child's life will spoil and pacify a child. It's going to steal their will to achieve. A lot of kids in our area have never really worked. Not really. They'll go to college, never having spent a summer really working hard. They don't even know how to make up their bed. They don't know how to get to school on time because their mom and dad are doing everything for them, paying off everything. The speeding ticket, the traffic accident. Too much money is too much. And a third thing, too high of expectations is too much. Years ago, George Brett played for the Kansas City Royals. You guys remember that baseball player? It was about 1980. In an article, he said he grew up under a dad who only had one word for him, and that word was higher. Everything was higher. In 1980, he was close to a 400 batting average. When the last game was played, he walked off the field having batted 390-something, the highest in the league that year. He was greeted by his dad in the dugout with these words: 5 more hits and you would have made it. Now, as dads, we're prone in that direction. Over-instructing, over-correcting, over-expecting in a child's life. We mean well because we want the best for them. But when we press that all the time, we don't make them better. We make them bitter. There are lots of sons and daughters and maybe some men in this room who even to this day, no matter what award you win, no matter how high you climb the corporate ladder, no matter what things you achieve, you can't really celebrate. You know why? You can still hear your dad saying, higher. And you never got the approval from your dad. There's a verse in the Bible that's specifically directed towards fathers about over-expecting. It's in Colossians 3:21. Here's what it says. Fathers, do not embitter your children, or they will become discouraged. Over-expecting, I believe, is what does that. Number 6, I believe a child would say this to us. I need you to show me what to believe by living it. There's a song from the 60s called Cats in the Cradle, Harry Chapin's song. It said, I'm going to be like you, Dad. You know I'm going to be like you. The real message of that song was simply this. Values are caught much more than they're taught. We like to tell kids what to do, but that's not what they leave home with. You know what they leave home with? They leave home with you. What you did behind closed doors. What you valued. I want you to listen to this note from a son about his dad. It's a great note. It says, my father is 73 and I still watch him. I am learning still from him. He has become a shining example to me of how a man, no matter his age, can overcome anything in life when he partners with God. I want to be more than ever to be like my father. That's an incredible note, isn't it? I want to have his heart and his character. I am motivated every day knowing my father is showing me the way and that my son is looking to me to do the same. I want my son to be as proud of me as I am even now of my dad. What an incredible legacy. That's what a child would tell us. Children need their dads to show them what to believe by living it. Now, on the other hand, if a child could speak, I believe the child would warn us with these words. Dad, I need you to know, you can wound me for a lifetime. You can wound me for a lifetime. Here's how. Children just naturally believe that their dad is a hero. They're going to give you credits that you don't even earn, okay? And you will always be your child's hero, no matter how you live. There's just something that they can never let go of that. If you do well, the idea of what a hero is and who you are become integrated. But if you don't do so well, or if you drop off the page, they don't stop seeing you as a hero. They just start struggling with how to reconcile how you live with that concept of hero. And it becomes confusing to them. They don't understand how a hero would betray mom. They don't understand why a hero would be defined with leaving us, never having time to interact with me, too busy to be involved with me personally. They have a hard time understanding hero with the life that they see you living behind closed doors. They have a hard time matching up hero with an over-controlling dad, or a dad that abuses them with anger, or a dad who just tries to buy them off with stuff. They can't figure it out, but they keep trying to make it work. Now, that dysfunctional definition of the word hero wounds them for a lifetime. And they go out into the world with anger and rage and depression, sometimes even addiction and pure pain. There are a lot of men who faced that pain right here in this room in the quest for authentic manhood over the last couple of years when we talked about learning how to face the absent father wound. And it's painful, okay? But they're encouraged here that they have got to work that out with their dad. Whether he cooperates or not, they have to settle. That's something I had to settle with my dad. He was long dead, and I still had that anger and that rage. Because you see, you'll never be at peace until you do. That's how important a dad is as a hero. Number 8, I believe a child would say this to his dads. I believe he would say, you know what, I need you to adjust your leadership style to me as I grow. And here's how that works, okay? When I'm a young child, under 13, I need you to be my coach. And as my coach, I want you to direct me and protect me and control me. That one's easy for us. We're natural at that, okay? But then between 13 and 18, I need something different from you. I need a cheerleader, an encourager. And if you try to coach me as a teenager, here's what you're going to get. You're going to see me roll my eyes a lot. And if you keep pressing me, you're going to get resistance and even rebellion. Because between 13 and 18, I'm trying to become my own person. And I need space from you. I need to know that I'm an individual. Now, that's a very insecure time for a teenager. It's not that they don't need you. They just need you to be different in your parenting style. And what they need most in those teenage years is a cheerleader, an encourager. Now, guys, I've got a whole lot to learn as a parent because even at my age, I'm still on the very front end of most of this stuff. However, I have lived vicariously through my best friend and his experiences for years. He's got 2 boys and a girl. Clayton, the youngest of his children, left home for college just last year. Here's a picture of Clayton when he was 13. He was really into William Wallace and Braveheart at the time. And my friend, his dad, leveraged that interest and used it in a manhood ceremony that we did, welcoming Clayton into his teenage years. Clayton went through a real challenging time when he was about 15. Low grades, lack of discipline, bad choices of friends that influenced him negatively. And his dad went in for a checkup because of stress-related symptoms. But his physician, who's really always been more of a spiritual leader than a doctor for him, a medical doctor, checked him out, and everything was pretty normal physically, but he asked him, he said, "So, how are things going with Clayton?" And he told him, and the doctor said, "You know, I think you need to get off the field and turn in your coach's whistle." And my buddy said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, Clayton needs to learn responsibility on his own now, and he needs an encourager now more than he needs a coach getting in his face." So the following Sunday morning, Clayton wouldn't get out of bed. His dad called him the second time, told him what time it was, said, "We're going to church." After church, his dad and his mom decided to take a drive from Little Rock up to Memphis and have dinner. Clayton finally woke up about 1:30 and nobody was home. He called his dad and said, "Where are you? What's wrong? Where are you guys?" He said, "Oh, we decided to go to Memphis." He said, "Was anything wrong?" And, "No, everything's fine." He said, "Look, I'll see you later tonight, but if we decide to stay later, then I'll see you after school on Monday. So you do your homework." Well, that Monday, his dad walked in his room and handed him a coach's whistle. Clayton said, "What's this?" And he explained that he was no longer his coach, that he was a responsible young man, that he believed in him, and he was there to help him. Now, guys, he had preceded that moment with correct teaching and correct coaching. You can't just pull this out of the air, okay? You got to have that history of the right kind of instruction. And so he said, "Look, I'm here to encourage you. I'm here to help you." That began a huge behavioral change for Clayton. Now, he's a fine young man today. That's him on the right, okay? That's my friend on the left. He's in his second year at Samford University. He's really interested in ROTC. That is totally different than what anybody expected. He's first in his class. He scored 29 out of 30 shots on the shooting range just this last week. Adjusting from a coach to an encourager was the key for his development. Then, after 18, your child needs you to be a consultant. That's when they invite you in, when they need you to come in. You don't go in uninvited. You just pay attention. And they need you at times to come in and listen and support them. Gentlemen, we just need to remind ourselves we are not raising children, we are raising adults. We are raising adults. Number 9, I believe a child would tell us today, "I need you to make some great memories with me to live on." Great memories. I believe there's a direct correlation between the memories we choose to keep in our minds and the lifestyle we live. And those memories are kind of like a support system for the lifestyle that we choose. Great memories really help create a great lifestyle. Now, there are lots of things dads can do with their sons and daughters to make great memories. I want to just throw this out. There's really a premier place in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. If you've got a son who's 14 or older, it's called Christ in the Tetons. And you can do things like climb mountains, whitewater raft, fly fish, horseback ride. There's even some time for these intimate father-son moments when you talk about manhood for a week. The website is listed there in your notes. If you think your wife would like to do something like that, there's even a mother-daughter adventure program. Now, you can do something as elaborate as this or something simpler but just as meaningful. The point is this: great memories at home help support a great lifestyle later on. Finally, I believe a child would tell us that he or she needs this. Dad, I need you to love God and share him with me. Children have a natural curiosity about God. You remember the Dartmouth study I mentioned when we first started? There's an interesting finding in that study. It supports the fact that when children come into the world, their minds are wired, believe it or not, guys, to believe in a transcendent being. It is a remarkable thing. And they want to think up and bigger than themselves. Now, as a dad, you can either take advantage of that and help fill that curiosity with your relationship with God, or you can just leave them hanging, leave them wanting. But everything says that spirituality is essential to the well-being of a child. So, you need to be able to share that with them. Those are 10 things a child needs. Don't let them leave home without them. And I've got 2 final thoughts to conclude with. The first one is this, okay? Children are God's gifts to us. In fact, I believe they're really one of the best gifts of life. I truly mean that now. Secondly, children are hard work. They are hard work. But nothing brings greater joy, especially when after all you've done and sacrificed for, they grow up, they stand tall, they look healthy, and they're difference makers. I think that's what John had in mind in 3 John 4 when he said these words. He said, I have no greater joy than this, than to see my children walking in the truth. And I believe he's referring to a much broader audience than his own biological children, but I believe it applies here. I have no greater joy than this, than to see my children walking in the truth. I want you to imagine yourself, okay, 60 or 70-year-old man, and regardless of what your sons or daughters are doing, they're standing tall in the community. They're honorable. They're difference makers. They're loving. They know how to engage people and have a good sense of themselves, and you get to enjoy all this. It seems about the time a dad figures this out, the kids are leaving home. I think nobody captures that moment better than Irma Bombeck in this article several years ago. Here's what she says. She says, when Mike was 3, he wanted a sandbox, and his father said, well, there goes the yard. We'll have kids over here night and day, and they'll throw sand in the flower beds, and cats will make a mess in it, and it'll kill the grass for sure. Mike's mother said, the grass will come back. When Mike was 5, he wanted a jungle gym set with swings that would take his breath away and bars that would take him to the summit. His father said, good grief, I've seen those swing sets in backyards. You know what they look like? They look like mud holes in a pasture. Kids digging their gym shoes in the ground, it'll kill the grass. Mike's mother said, it'll come back. Between breaths, when Daddy was blowing up the plastic swimming pool, he warned, you know what they're going to do to this place? They're going to condemn it and use it for a missile site. I hope you know what you're doing. They'll track water everywhere. They'll have 1 million water fights. You won't be able to take out the garbage without stepping in mud up to your neck. When we take this thing down, we'll have the only brown lawn on the block. It'll come back, Mike's mother said. When Mike was 12, he volunteered his yard for a camp out. As they hoisted the tents and drove in the spikes, his father stood in the window and observed, why don't I just put the grass seed out in cereal bowls for the birds and save myself the trouble of spreading it around? You know for a fact that all those tents and all those big feet are going to trample down every single blade of grass, don't you? And don't bother to answer me. I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, it'll come back. The basketball hoop on the side of the garage attracted more crowds than the Winter Olympics. And a small patch of lawn that started out with a barren spot the size of a garbage can lid soon grew to encompass the entire side yard. And just when it looked like the new seed might take root, the winter came and the sled runners beat it into ridges. Mike's father shook his head and said, I've never asked for much in this life, only a small patch of green grass. And his wife smiled and said, it'll come back. Well, this fall, the lawn was beautiful. It was green and alive, and it rolled out like a sponge carpet along the drive where gym shoes had trod. along the garage where bicycles used to fall, and around the flower beds where little boys used to dig with teaspoons. But Mike's father never saw the yard. He anxiously looked beyond the yard and asked with a catch in his voice, "He will come back, won't he?" Yep, that's the good stuff. That's what parenting is all about. Dad really is a great title, isn't it, guys? All right, don't forget to do the Die to Live application project. Interview your son or daughter, or if they're younger, just kind of do a general thing on your own and see if you can do a best guess. Next session, I'm going to give you a year-by-year game plan on how to raise a son or daughter, so don't miss it. All right? See you next time, guys.